Guys, we're grateful you're here. We understand you could be anywhere else in the world, but you're here, and for that reason, we're fired up. We're thankful that you decided to join us on this beautiful Sunday morning. So on a day like today, go outside, do something fun, because it is an awesome day outside. I want to move quick here because I want to be able to get y'all small groups with some good info. So we're going to be in Mark chapter 8, verse number 1. Mark chapter 8, verse number 1. And I'm going to go ahead and start reading as you're kind of typing there. I think it'll be up on the screen behind me. Okay. It says this in Mark chapter 8, verse number 1. During those days, another large crowd gathered. Since they had nothing to eat, Jesus called his disciples to him and said, I have compassion for these people. Everybody say, these people. Highlight that because that's important. These people, they were Gentiles, not Jewish people. And that's very, very important. That's kind of massive in the story. I have compassion for these people. They have already been with me 3 days and have nothing to eat. If I send them home hungry, they will collapse on the way because some of them have come a long distance. His disciples answered, but where in this remote place, highlight that too because that's important. They're not like in a place where there's lots of shops. They couldn't go to H-E-B. They couldn't just go snag some more fish and bread from the store as they're trying to feed all these people. They're like, dude, we're in the middle of nowhere. How can we get enough bread to feed them? How many loaves do you have? Jesus asked. 7, they replied. He told the crowd to sit down on the ground. When he had taken the 7 loaves and given thanks, he broke them and gave them to his disciples to distribute to the people, and they did so. They had a few small fish as well, and he gave thanks for them also and told the disciples, which I think is interesting because he gave thanks for the food before they knew it was enough, which I thought was interesting. So regardless of what you have in your hand, you should always be thankful because you don't know what God's going to do with that thing that you have in your hand. Just an interesting note. You can underline that. And told the disciples to distribute them. The people ate and were satisfied. Afterward, the disciples picked up 7 basketfuls of broken pieces that were left over, which I don't know about you, but I'm a fan of leftovers. About 4,000 were present after he had sent them away, which was nice that he gave them some to-go boxes to heat up in the microwave when they got back to the house. He got into the boat with his disciples and went to the region of Dalmanutha. If you're taking notes, which I always encourage you guys to take notes because what you write down is what you remember, the title of this week's message is Sovereign, Part 4. Sovereign, Part 4. And you can write down the target statement for today. A sentence you're not going to want to forget. The sentence is this. God exceeds every need. God exceeds every single need. This sentence has never meant more to me in my life than I think it does in this current time that I'm in right now. I have always been incredibly comfortable talking on stages. Since I was a youth, since I was 16 years old, I was president of my FCA, and I was giving messages and doing things like that and just kind of doing the thing. Even prior to that, I was like that guy who would like go up in front of the school or like the class and like give presentations even though I didn't know anything I was talking about. Like I never studied up on the presentation, but I was like that guy who would just go spew nonsense for 5 minutes to get a decent grade. Like I've always been that guy. To be able to get up in front of people, talk, discuss, and do those things. And obviously I've been doing it here professionally for 6-7 years. I've never had any anxiety about being on a stage or being in front of people ever in my life, until right now, the last 3 weeks of my life. And where that stems from is 3 or 4 weeks ago, I had some health issues. I had some problems with my kidneys and stuff like that to where maybe you remember if you're out live, I cut a sermon like super short. So I went straight into an invitation and I had like 3 points left. And I cut that sermon short. One, invitation, sure, but also because I was going to pass out. And so thankfully, that health situation has progressed positively. And I feel good, like been working out, been doing the thing, been running, which maybe I shouldn't be pushing myself that far. But I feel good. Like generally speaking, I feel good physically. Tests have come back. I think I'm going in the right direction, which is super awesome, personally, because I'd like to be healthy. But what was a physical problem has morphed into a mental one. So being that happened on a stage, every time I'm about to get on a stage now, never in my life have I felt this. I feel the same sensation that I did that night. I feel like I'm going to faint. I feel like I wear like a heart tracker to test my heart rate. My heart rate jumps up to like the 140s. And I feel like super nervous, very tingly, very strange. But you've noticed since that time that I've spoken, right? I spoke live, spoke at Bible study last week. I do the invitations, I do the hosting. And every time I've done that, I felt like I was going to throw up every single time. You're like, how, Nick, why is it? Like, you don't seem nervous. I've spoken for so long. Yeah, you may not be able to tell that I feel like I want to throw up right now because I have a natural skill set in doing this. And it's like riding a bike. Yes, I've done it. But internally, I feel a feeling that I've never felt before in my life. With that said, I've had to come to a place of complete dependence on God in something that, yes, like, don't hear me wrong, as a pastor, yes, I want God to talk to me. Yes, I seek his guidance. Yes, I seek his strength when I get up here, and I have for my whole life. Of course, I prayed that prayer, like, God, speak through me, whatever. But it's been the last 3 or 4 weeks that I've truly, earnestly needed God to speak through me on the stage, because aside from that, I got nothing. I wouldn't step up here if it wasn't for God providing for the need that it is for me to preach and teach his word to you guys. Everybody say we need him. We need him, I need him, and you need him. Your thing might not be stage fright. It might not be anxiety or stress like it is for me, but maybe it's like a family situation where you're like looking at it, you're like, there's no way we're going to be able to navigate this aside from the power of God. Maybe it's a friendship situation where you're like, oh my gosh, the drama's at like an all-time high. I don't know what to do. How do I navigate this? There's no way this rectifies itself except by God providing for the need in this situation. Sometimes we come to our wits' end and we can't navigate it on our own. Right now, I'm up here purely by God exceeding my need to teach his word. And God intends to exceed your needs in your life, not just on stages, but in every situation. God wants to exceed your needs. So I want to move quickly here because we have 5 minutes, but I want to give you 3 points from the passage that I think will be helpful for you as we look at Mark chapter 8, 1 through 10, and how God exceeds our need. Number 1, Jesus cares about your needs, big or small. He cares about your needs, big or small. It talked about in the passage that I mentioned, like these people, he had compassion on these people. Those people were Gentiles. They're not even his own Jewish people. Gentiles are people who otherwise people didn't look at with much respect. I mean, think like early 1900s American, how we looked at people of color. Like that's how they looked at the Gentiles, as less than. And Jesus looked at them and it's like, I care for these people. For you, you need to know, regardless if you're white or black, rich or poor, famous or unknown, if your need is big or small, if you have a lot of needs or you feel like you only got one, God cares about your needs. I said this before, God sees you in a specific sense, not a general sense. That if you were the only person on the planet, when it came to him dying on the cross for your sins, he would have done it. Jesus cares about your needs. You can go to him in prayer personally because he cares about you as an individual. That's a big deal. That's number 1. Number 2, many of us need to notice our need. Many of us need to notice our need. In verses 4 through 5, it talks about the disciples noticed their need because it was obvious, right? It was like, we don't have any food. Jesus, we need you to multiply some fish and bread here. I wanted to have like a loaf of bread. I'm not really sure what happened to that, but I really wish we had like a loaf of bread right here. But the point being, like, it was obvious. Like, we're hungry. There's not a lot of food. We need you to do something, Jesus. But for a lot of us, our need isn't as obvious. For me, it wasn't obvious. Can I just keep it like 100% with you? I know that I am relatively decent at this and have always been decent at it in comparison to my peers. When my peers would go to teach the Bible when we were 16 years old, I was always the one who would get affirmation on me going to teach. This was never something that I knew that I needed God to do. For a lot of us, we don't notice our need. And it's important to notice it because when you notice that you need God, regardless if you feel like life's going great or if you feel like life is just horrible right now, it's important for you to notice where you need God in your life, because when you need God, you can look to him and realize how amazing he is when he gets to show off his greatness in your life. Like right now, I am so thankful to God to be able to get up here and do this thing, to come in here and not throw up and not faint and feel good and be passionate about as I'm talking about his word. Like, I'm going to go home today and feel so encouraged because I know God's got me. But if you don't notice your need and you think you're just going through life on your own strength, your own power, and your own charisma and your own ability, then you'll never notice how awesome God is in the process. So it's important to be humble and recognize before you have a health issue or something traumatic happens to your life that you need him, that you have spots in your life that you cannot do outside of his strength. It's very important to notice that. Number 3, the last one. Like the mailman, our God always delivers. Like the mailman, our God always delivers. Verses 6 through 10, he talks about how like they offered him the fish and the loaves and he made it work. And the interesting thing about what the disciples did, though, it wasn't about their effort, it was about their expectation. It wasn't about the fact that they had like a lot of things to bring to the table. No, they didn't bring anything to the table. All they brought to the table was a little bit of fish, a little bit of bread, and probably not even good bread. But Jesus did a lot with a little. And that's what he wants to do in your life. Guys, it's not about your effort. It's not about your ability. It's not about the fact that you can like make the varsity squad or do a lot of amazing things. No, it's not about that. What's it about? It's about, God, do I expect you to do with me what only you can do? To use me in a massive way in my school, on my team, in my scenario, right? That's what it's about. Expecting God to do something powerful through you. That's what it's all about. And God will deliver. But here's the caveat before you go to small group. Here's the caveat. The delivery doesn't always look like how you think it's going to look. What do I mean by that? And I want you to get this, because maybe you haven't been paying attention up to me at this point. That's fine. But up to this point, I need your attention, because this is important. God's provision and delivery doesn't always look like what you think it's going to look like. Sometimes the delivery is later than you think it should be. This has been ongoing for almost a month. You don't think I want this to be over with now? But God's still got lessons for me, apparently. And sometimes you open the package and what's in there isn't what you thought you prayed for. God, I wanted peace in my life. I didn't think you'd have to take my boyfriend away from me. God, I wanted joy. I didn't think that you're going to put me through the toughest situation ever, so that way I'd realize the times that I were in weren't so bad. Is that sometimes the delivery doesn't look like what you thought it would, right? And it's important for you to know, to temper your expectations of life. So as you go into group, discuss this with your small group leader. Ask them this question, actually. Say, leader, my minister, my shepherd, when was a time God provided for you? When all the odds were against you, when was a time God provided for you? But in the greatest need God will ever fill for us is the need for us to be saved, to go to heaven when we die, to have eternal security. And in filling that need, he sent his son, Jesus Christ, to die for us on the cross. And if you have questions about that, please, 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 I'd love to have a conversation with you. Your small group leader would love to have a conversation with you.